In this video, we're going to talk about the emu, and let me tell you, this is one of the world's most fascinating birds, just packed with some seriously surprising facts. Alright, let's just jump right in and take a close look at this incredible creature. I mean, what an icon of Australia, right? And just check out those big, curious eyes. They're not just for show. They're perfectly designed for spotting trouble from way, way off in those wide open plains. So here's a question for you, and it's a wild one. What bird is tough enough to actually win a war against the Australian military? I know it sounds like a punchline to a joke, but believe it or not, it actually happened. Don't worry, we're definitely going to get to that amazing story. Okay, but first things first, let's cover the basics. So what exactly is an emu, and where does it fit into the whole animal kingdom? Well, emus are part of this really old family of flightless birds called ratites. And get this, they're the second largest bird on the entire planet. That is seriously impressive. And what's really cool is they're native to just one single continent. And that continent is, you guessed it, Australia. You'll only find them roaming wild right across the mainland there. They're super nomadic, which means they're pretty much always on the move, looking for food and water. So what about their numbers? Well, the good news is their population is really stable. They're listed as least concern, which is great. We're talking somewhere between 625,000 and 725,000 of them out there. That's a lot of emus roaming the continent. Okay, so how on earth did they manage to survive in such a tough place? The Australian outback is no joke. Well, it turns out emus are perfectly adapted for it. You could say they're true masters of survival. For one thing, they are just massive. They can stand up to 6.2 feet tall. That's as tall as a person, and you can imagine that height gives them a fantastic view of their surroundings, perfect for spotting any threats. And if they do spot danger, they don't just stand there, they can run. We're talking 30 miles per hour. That's almost 50 kilometers an hour. For a bird that can't even fly, that is just incredibly fast. But it doesn't stop there. Their survival toolkit is just amazing. Get this, they have 2 sets of eyelids. One of them is clear, like built-in goggles to keep the dust out. Their feathers are shaggy and double-layered to block the sun. They're the only bird with calf muscles, and, believe it or not, they can swim. Alright, so we know they're built like tanks for survival. But what's their day-to-day life actually like? Let's take a look at how they live, what they eat, and how they hang out with each other. You know, a lot of the time, emus are loners, just doing their own thing. But sometimes, they'll gather in these big nomadic groups called a mob. There's no real leader or chief in charge, though. It's more like a temporary get-together when there's a good reason, like finding food. When it comes to food, they're not picky. They're omnivores, so they'll eat everything from fruits and seeds to insects and small animals. And here's a really wild fact. They swallow small stones. Why? Well, those stones actually help grind up their food in their stomach. How cool is that? They're so efficient, they can even go for weeks without eating. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about family life. Because when it comes to raising kids, emus have one of the strangest, most unusual strategies in the entire animal kingdom. And it is all about the dad. So here's how it works. The female lays this clutch of about 5 to 15 huge, dark green eggs. And then she just leaves. Yep, her job is totally done. The male then takes over everything. He's the one who sits on the eggs for almost 2 months, and then he's the one who raises the little striped chicks all by himself. And talk about commitment, this is next level. For nearly 2 whole months, the dad doesn't eat, he doesn't drink, he doesn't leave that nest for anything. In the process, he can lose up to 1/3 of his entire body weight. That is some serious dedication. Okay, last big topic. Let's look at how these super tough birds deal with their enemies. And yeah, that definitely includes us humans. For a full-grown emu, there aren't many natural predators out there. I mean, they're huge and they're fast, but it's a different story for their eggs and the young chicks. They're pretty vulnerable to things like dingoes, foxes, and even large reptiles. Alright, it's time for that war story I promised you. So, back in 1932, after World War I, you had about 20,000 emus, causing a real headache for farmers by eating their crops. It got so out of hand that the Australian military was actually called in to manage the situation. So you've got soldiers with machine guns against a bunch of birds. You'd think it would be an easy win for the army, right? Wrong. The emus were just too smart. They were fast, they'd split up into small groups, they basically ran circles around the soldiers. It was a complete failure for the military. The Emus had won. The Emus literally won a war. And that brings us to one last brilliant fun fact that ties this all together. Emus can't walk backwards. It's physically impossible for them. And that's exactly why they're on the Australian coat of arms. They're a symbol of a nation that's always moving forward, never backward. Alright, that is it for this video, everyone. Thank you for watching. Please make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video.